fear was, like, how do I source them well? Like, do I commission people to write them? Like, what's the best take? And it just so happened that a story fell into my lap from Cary, and I'm really excited to read it to you guys today. Some extended lore is that Cary's wife is one of my closest best friends. The reason that my house is nice and decorated and put together is because she came over and decorated everything. The reason I have any ideas for spooky stuff is because of her. She saved my life in one occasion, specifically in college. And if you've seen it, this tattoo on my arm she designed and drew specifically for me to cover up some scarring. So she is truly just a wonderful person, and both her and her husband are incredibly creative, so I'm really, really excited to be reading one of his stories today. I'm not sponsored by anybody. Nobody sponsors this channel. That's just how it is right now, and I'm happy with that. So they're not paying me to read any of this to you. I just personally really like their content, and I thought, what better way to celebrate spooky time with some of the, like, spookiest Halloween-centered people that I know. So, I got my little coffee. Forgive me, mommy's a tired bitch. But today, I'll have to pick it up again at some point, but today I am going to be reading from a new publication called Secrets of the Forsaken, Into the Depths of Dread. It has multiple artists, multiple authors in this book, and one of them is Cary, so I'll be reading his story today called Deadhead. Head with no A-H-E-D, Deadhead. The back to explain this publication. conversation for a response. Big wreck up on around mile marker 100. Might want to find a detour there, partner. Over. Said a female voice on the radio. I heard that. Yep, Jerry responded. Say, what's your call sign there, darling? Don't call me darling. You can call me Jane Doe. Who am I speaking to? Over. I'm Jerry, but my handle is Deadhead. Deadhead doesn't mean anything in particular. Just an old nickname from my army days, that's all. Over. Well, Deadhead, you might want to head down 58 South if you still can make the exit. The semi's left over and it's going nowhere fast, said the female trucker, Jane Doe. Jerry held his brand new 1985 United States Road Atlas open and traced it with his finger. I can see the route, but hey, sure you don't want to hop in my truck and take a ride with me, he said, throwing a Hail Mary to this attractive voice on the radio. Truckers weren't the most gentlemanlike on the radios, and Jerry Hadfield specifically was not one for romantic gestures. With a name like Deadhead, I wouldn't be caught dead in your truck. Besides, I already took the exit. I'm a few miles ahead of you, Deadhead. Ouch, I can take a hint. Thanks for the intel, Miss Doe. Over. Jerry saw the string of red lights ahead of him, and just before he met them, he hit his turn signal and made an exit on 58 South. He couldn't stop thinking about the female voice that he met on the CB. It's not common to meet lady truckers on the road, so he reached out to start a conversation. There's not much else to do on these highways. Jane Doe, are you out there? Over. He heard static. Jane. He must be out of range. That or Miss Doe is ignoring him. Static. He and his 18-wheel rig drove southeast, just passing a sign that said, entering Kiowa Comanche Apache Reservation. Jerry was drafted in the Army the second he grabbed his diploma in 1965. He didn't really have many plans in life, so he didn't argue much when his dad handed him his draft letter. He basically was dropped into battle without any real firearm training. The most experience he had with a gun was when they were kids and played cowboys and Indians with cap guns and plastic bows and arrows. Except since he grew up on an Indian reservation, everyone only wanted to play Indians and Indians. Fighting the Viet Cong was basically that, cowboys and Indians. Except this time, he was the cowboy, the cavalry riding into battle to slaughter the savages. If only it was that simple. He was dropped right into the jungle around 0 dark 30, 18 years old, never even having laid with a woman. Bullets whizzing past his face, army crawling through the trenches, thankful that each time a bullet landed on flesh, it wasn't his. Until it was. A year and 6 months after being taken from his home, and having had a gun placed in his hands, Jerry Hadfield, or Deadhead as his platoon called him, was found shot and bleeding to death in a field. His entire platoon was assassinated, and he was the only survivor. Sorry. Jerry was awarded a Purple Heart and medically discharged from the military. He survived the war. The term survived was generous. The boy who went into the army was not the man that walked out. He came back with more than a medal. He came home with a load of shell shock. He still has nightmares of those Viets prowling through the jungle. He just wanted to make his dad proud. Instead, he came back to the good old United States being labeled a woman and child killer. His dad couldn't even look him in the eyes anymore. I was just following Uncle Sam's orders, he thought. Sure, he did some things he wasn't proud of, but damn it, he did it for his country. And they called him a murderer. Bastards. Breaker, 1-9, Jane Doe, are you there? He held the CB radio, hoping for a response. Static rang through the radio. He sure would like some company tonight, he thought, even if it's just a female companion on the radio. Well, there he is. Hey, handsome, it's Jane Doe here. Jerry had a little bit of a stomach drop. She called him handsome. Was she flirting? Suddenly wide awake, he responded, I was hoping to hear from you, darling. I knew Charlie's on this radio, he said, trying to keep the conversation alive while he waited through the static of the radio for her response. I told you not to call me darling. And negative. Clear sailing all the way through the reservation, handsome. Jerry hadn't felt the touch of a woman in a coon's age. Unfortunately, that is a phrase that I use often, as I haven't you some action, but $50 will get you some boom boom. But it ain't like the passion behind lovemaking. Just the fact she called him handsome sent a large amount of blood flow down his trousers. Lacking a response, he just asked the general trucker questions. Jerry, you do know I'm flirting with you, right? Jane said through the radio. It's been a while since that's happened, to be honest, Jerry said. How about I make you an offer? I'm feeling very lonely tonight, and I don't want to spend the evening by myself again. I could use some sexual healing, if you know what I mean. I am actually from around these parts and could find us a place to meet if you'd be interested. Do you copy? Without hesitation, he grabbed the CB radio and said, name a time and place. Over. Static rang through the radio, and suddenly he realized he was out of range to get a response. He thought to himself, are you fucking kidding me? Can I catch a break for God's sake? Jane, are you there? Do you copy? Over. More static. Where should we meet? Over. And there was still no response. Jerry drove south, the disappointment evident by how aggressive he was behind the wheel. The feeling in his loins was one he hadn't felt for a long time. Just the idea that a woman wanted to have sex with him instead of paying for it. Jesus. He hadn't even seen this woman, had no idea what she looked like, and still had him erect like this. He didn't care what she looked like, honestly. He wasn't even sure if she was actually a woman, but he was lonely enough to want to find out. The last time he had sex was months ago, driving through Arizona or New Mexico or one of those desert places. He picked up a lot lizard. It wasn't hard to do, and he was never proud of it, but it was just easy. He had gained quite a bit of weight during his trucker tenure, and he never really was the most handsome guy, even though Jane seemed to think he was just by the sound of his voice. But a man has needs, even if it's from some hooker at a truck stop. At least he hadn't resorted to asking for sexual favors from other men truckers. He'd seen the holes in the side of gas station bathroom stalls and knew what they were for. There ran a woman on the other side of that stall partner, he thought. No, the last time was the last time he was going to pay for sex. A cute young Indian girl, Pueblo or Navajo probably. Couldn't have been more than 18 and no younger than 18, he thought, lying to himself. He invited her to his truck, even though she wasn't the most attractive. She was very skinny, short hair, and very timid. She had performed her duties, made him feel loved, and tried to leave the truck with more than her $20 payment. She had his entire wallet. Jerry saw red, and the next thing he knew, she was bleeding and knocked out in the cab of his truck. I'm not a murderer, he thought. Not knowing what to do, he drove, dumped her about 20 miles off in the desert, off some random dirt road. He honestly thought she was dead, but as he was leaving her, he heard the faintest whimper. That's just in my head, but the deed had been done. He was leaving her in the desert, in the dead of the summer. He had not hit a woman since Vietnam, and thought those days were surely over. He thought he was a changed man. As he was driving away from the young sex worker, he tried not to look in the rearview mirror, but he glanced, and he thought he saw her running towards him. He told himself that was all in his head. Maybe this whole nightmare was just that, a nightmare. Suddenly his CB radio lit up. Deadhead, do you copy? Are you not interested in meeting with me? Jane Doe called out. Yes, absolutely. Where? Over. Jerry was ecstatic. Maybe his CB wasn't out of range after all. I told you 3 times already, silly. Let's meet at the old truck stop off the junction of 19 and 58. Meet me doors. What he couldn't tell from the darkness, though, was that semi-truck hadn't been driven in many years. He put a mitt in his mouth, smelled his breath, and thought it was passable. Was he seriously considering going into this dark, desolate truck station in the middle of the night for some sex? Yes, without a question he was. He needed it. He had to have it, and it wasn't just sex. It was going to be love-making. Before he exited the truck, he could see a dark, petite figure of a woman walking towards his truck, coming from inside the gas station. He watched in curiosity as the lady, who he could now see was wearing a Native American shawl, knocked on the passenger side window. "Hey, deadhead, are you just gonna sit in there all night, or are you coming inside to keep me company?" Cary sat there in stunned disbelief. Nothing was normal about tonight, from the wreck on the highway to the flirting on the CB radio, and now this gorgeous woman who now stands on the side step of his truck. He rolled down the window. Each hand crank of the window lever revealed more of her beauty. He was speechless. She stared at him with beautiful, inviting yet familiar eyes. "Wow, you really are handsome. I'm getting lucky tonight," she said without breaking eye contact. "I'll be in the women's restroom. Don't make me start without you." And she stepped off the running board of the truck with the sound of her high heels on the steel of the truck steps and walked seductively back to the gas station. The parking lot was deteriorated, full of cracked asphalt and gravel. He made his way towards the restroom, each step with his alligator skin boots crunched in the dirt. He made his way around the side of the truck stop, and sure enough, the woman's restroom was unlocked. He slowly cracked the door open and looked inside. "Hello," he said with low confidence. "I thought you'd never make it," said a voice in the very back handicap stall. Underneath the stall dividers, he could see a little mattress laid on the ground, or possibly just blankets she'd laid out for them both to lie down. The restroom had one flickering light bulb above the sink, sort of a strobe-like effect, setting the mood. Cary waited at the bathroom door, now hesitant to move any further. "This isn't exactly what I had in mind, Miss Doe." He waited for a response, but none came. He just stared at the dirty gas station bathroom stall. At this point, he could cut his losses, make a beeline for the truck and drive off, but this opportunity didn't come often. His curiosity caused him to see what was behind door number 3. Cary opened the stall door and saw Jane give him the "come here" motion with her pointed finger. She was unbelievably gorgeous, by far the most beautiful woman that has ever given him the light of day. She grabbed him by his face and pulled him in. For a second, her lips hovered over his, just their warm breath colliding before she laced his lips with his. He could live here forever, the most wonderful kiss he had ever experienced. The woman laughed and pulled back. The faint flicker of the sink light revealed her new face. Cary grabbed his chest and fell back. He was suddenly paralyzed with fear. The woman he went with into the stall was not the woman standing in front of him anymore. "Who the hell are you?" Cary said as he scooted away, wiping his lips clean off. Give me a visceral feeling. "Who the hell are you?" Cary said as he scooted away, wiping his lips clean of the saliva the seemingly 100-year-old woman left on him. "You know who I am," the woman said, laughing, and he kept backing up slowly out of the stall towards the door of the restroom. His fist kept clenching. His arm. Was he having a heart attack? No, he'd experienced this before. In the jungle, he froze in fear, while a dozen of his platoon brothers were shot to death in the trees next to him under his watch while they slept. This was the same feeling, a paralysis induced by fear. The woman laughed and slowly stepped out of the stall. The clop-clop of what he thought were high heels on the bathroom tile were not that at all. As she stepped closer, the flickering yellow light revealed her true form. It revealed that her feet were not feet at all. They were hooves. Clop, clop, clop. "No, no, no," Cary pleaded. The hideous, ancient, shawl-wearing woman in front of him inched closer toward him. Her eyes were as black as night, and he saw a mouthful of rotted, stained teeth when she smiled devilishly at him. He scooted back against the door, and she proceeded towards him. Each step closer revealed more of her hideous features. With a supernatural strength that he could not explain, she brought down one of her hooves in a stomp on his leg that shattered his femur. strength to army crawl out of the restroom, now on the cracked concrete and gravel-ridden parking lot of the truck stop. "Do you know who I am?" the hideous, hoof-footed woman asked. Still crawling slowly, Jerry answered. "You're the dear woman," he said, whimpering like a dog hit by a car. "I heard stories about you as a kid." He could see his truck, maybe 50 feet away. If he could get to his truck, he could use the CB radio to call for help, and maybe this nightmare would be over. Each inch he moved was agony. She slowly walked next to him as he crawled into the parking lot. "How about now?" she asked. Jerry looked up and saw her face was now the face of the young hooker he abandoned in the desert a few months prior, except her face was dehydrated, lips cracked and bleeding, and eyes bloodshot and sunburned. She looked the same way it looked the second she died in the 120-degree desert. "That's right. I'm also Samantha, the That's right. I'm also Samantha, the 14-year-old girl you dumped in the New Mexico desert." 14. "My parents are still looking for me. Did you know that? The highway patrol found my body, but there wasn't enough left to identify me. I'm forever a Jane Doe. Do you have any idea what it feels like to be eaten alive by 100,000 fire ants?" He did not know that. He remembered walking past missing posters at truck stops across the nation, but never once thought to himself, that is truly awful for them. Gravel filled his fingers as he crawled and pulled the earth towards him, inching. I'm having an attack, hang on. Gravel filled his fingers as he crawled and pulled the earth towards him, inching towards the salvation of the truck. "I am also on the woman that you executed in Vietnam with a bullet to the head. Did you know I left behind 2 baby boys? They never knew a life without war thanks to what your people did to us." Jerry didn't want to look up, but out of the corner of his eye he could see what he saw in his nightmares ever so frequently. A woman with a hole in her face where her left eye used to be, blood rushing down her face, and a hole in the back of her skull that used to hold her brains in place. "Please, let me go. I'll never hurt a woman again. I'll go to church. I promise I'll be good," he pleaded. "That's what you said to your ex-girlfriend, who you left with the double black eyes, isn't it?" the dear woman responded. "So, what are you going to do? Stop me to death? That's what you do, right?" His vision was tunneled. His only goal was to reach his truck and call for help. He continued to crawl, dragging his useless broken leg behind him, while now coughing up blood. "No, that's too good for you," the dear woman responded and walked away. So close, Jerry thought as he crawled, not realizing he hadn't heard from the dear woman in the past minute or so. Is she gone? He thought again, crawling through the parking lot like he did in the Vietnamese jungle. She was just in my head. She was just in my head. He survived Nam. He could survive this. Then he was blinded by his own headlights, and he heard the familiar sounds that he's heard almost every day for the past 20 years of his life. The 600 horsepower engine of his truck roaring to life, the hiss of the pistons, and the smell of the diesel fuel that still always reminded him of riding the school bus as a kid. He heard the truck change gears, and it started, slowly rolling forward. "What are you doing? Get out of my truck," he yelled. With the little energy he had, almost blacking out due to the pain, he was able to muster the last bit of fury he had left and crawled away as fast as he pathetically could. Each crawl was a pathetic attempt to survive a second longer. His truck was coming toward him slowly. He suddenly knew what deer felt like in the headlights right before their deaths. He flipped over on his back, accepting his fate. "You bitch." And then the woman struck him. The smile of the old woman behind his steering wheel was the last thing he'd ever see. The Bureau of Indian Affairs officer and the coroner stood over the corpse. "Remind me, where have you seen anything like this?" asked the coroner. The BIA officer stepped back while brushing away the hoof prints from the gravel with his boots. He had seen similar homicides just like this officer stated, before the CB radio sprang to life in the cockpit of the semi-truck once again. Breaker 19.